Whilst The Woman Who Fell to Earth had been a decent, if rather uninspired start, safe to say it fell somewhat short in developing the relationships and motivations of our main characters. With this in mind, greater pressure now falls on our next episode to pick up the slack. A companion's second adventure is an important one in their first season, typically showcasing the wonders of travelling the universe, as well as developing and cementing their relationship with the Doctor, and that's on top of presenting an engaging sci-fi premise. They've not typically been the best episodes, but they generally fulfill their purpose pretty well. After this underwhelming start to the Chibnall era, the companions were in need of a well-written second episode to fully flesh out their characters. So, our characters are rescued from the middle of space and wake up on board two different spaceships. Their pilots are both heading towards the planet Desolation, which has mysteriously slipped from its orbit. Upon arrival, our characters discover they're at the final stage of a deadly space race, the Rally of the 12 Galaxies. To make it out alive, they must join the two finalists in traversing the planet's dangerous surface, in search of the legendary Ghost Monument, which may be the key to reuniting with the TARDIS. First things first, this episode marks the introduction of a new title sequence. Doctor Who's titles have usually been a hallmark of the show, typically showcasing state-of-the-art developments in visual effects techniques. However, things stumbled a little during the Moffat era, first with Peter Anderson Studios' various Instagram filters for Series 7, followed by something that looked as if it had been hurriedly thrown together by one person in After Effects. Even fan-made efforts were putting the BBC to shame at this point. And so BBC turned to the fans, bringing Billy Hanshaw on board to design the 12th Doctor's new titles based on his own original concept. It was certainly a step up from the last effort, but still arguably looked cheaper than even the titles from 2005. On top of this, the show consistently failed to sync the music and visuals correctly throughout Capaldi's run. At this point, the title sequence had honestly begun feeling like an afterthought, so ultimately it's a pleasant surprise to see just how good these new titles look. They're not my favourite, but for the first time in years the titles feel like they've received the attention they deserve. This is also the first time in decades that they come close to resembling their original 1960s counterparts. Even the music is heavily based on the original Derbyshire theme, directly sampling elements for it. This time they employed the talents of another fan, known for many years on YouTube as John Smith VFX. He had already contributed some visual effects to Capaldi's last two stories, as well as having an impressive portfolio of content on YouTube. Safe to say, his surreal, ethereal style effectively captures a modern take on the original Howl Around titles. I'd say it's the best they've looked since 2011, and I far prefer this theme to the squealing synth of Capaldi's. My only criticism of the titles is that they're just completely unfitting for this era of the show. I just can't look at this Doctor and connect it to those titles.
Yeah, cheering.
They'd honestly fit the 12th Doctor far better, and 13 would suit the higher-pitched, quirky aesthetic of those. Similar to Episode 1, I think the first 10 minutes of this story are pretty strong. Our characters getting rescued from space is a predictable resolution, but what's exciting here is the storytelling opportunities this opens up. Our characters could be anywhere in deep space, and who knows what they may encounter now. Perhaps we'll even be missing the TARDIS for a few episodes. I think Ryan's reaction works well here, feeling pretty believable and introducing some good tension.
How are we in space? I've got no idea.
Although Graham is remarkably level-headed, all things considered.
Breathe slowly, son. Well done, that's it.
We're not doing anything unless you turn this thing around and go and look for our friends.
Something that really sells these opening minutes is the way the scenes with Yaz are shot. They use an unbroken long take that is honestly pretty impressive and really helps sell the frantic energy of the scene. The way we follow Yaz effectively grounds us in her perspective as she stumbles into the cockpit. It feels like some of the most purposeful direction the series has had so far, creating a clear atmosphere with intent behind the camera usage. However, something that does let this scene down a bit is the characterization of the Doctor. She comes across less as an intelligent and witty authoritative figure, and more like she's just barking insults at this character.
Manual shield activation. Well, this thing should be on Antiques Roadshow.
Right, blast shields up. Don't know how long they'll last for though.
Brilliant. About to crash land on Desolation. Real grounds for optimism.
Do you not understand?
Why is she so angry with him anyway? They're on board a failing spaceship that's about to crash land onto a planet's surface, and yet her first instinct is to actively antagonize the pilot. It's a shame, because when this happens, the scene's focus switches from Yaz to the Doctor nipping at the heels of this guy, when really we should stay grounded in Yaz's reaction. Then the Doctor mentions she forgot Yaz was there, which comes across very strangely.
We're about to die. Oh, sorry, Yaz, I forgot you were there. All gonna be fine.
I think it's an attempt to make her quirky and scatterbrained, but considering she's literally just seen Yaz stumbling around the room, it comes across as weirdly cold.
You were right. She's still alive.
Yaz, you need to stay locked in the medipod. Oh, sorry, Yaz. I forgot you were there.
Kinda feels like she's more interested in berating this guy with references to Antiques Roadshow than caring about her so-called friend.
I'm calling you Yaz, because we're friends now.
Not a particularly great first showing for this Doctor.
We're about to die and you're still having a go!
Aside from that, this sequence is impressive, and the visual effects look pretty damn great. There are some minor issues, such as the giant spaceship shadows disappearing between shots, but overall very solid. Unfortunately, the following crash sequence reveals a bit more of the show's budget. Once again, the CGI is impressive, probably the best it's looked in years, but once the ship actually impacts, we awkwardly cut to black, and then the Doctor emerges over the top of a small hill. There's very clearly no wreckage, and the scene moves on as quickly as possible to try and hide that. Now, usually I wouldn't nitpick something like this, since Doctor Who has never had the luxury of a massive budget. However, the reason I bring it up here is due to how unnecessary this whole sequence is. It's exciting, sure, but it's also just filler for the first chunk of the episode. The crash doesn't actually impact anything in the story, and our characters getting split up is resolved almost instantly. Scenes of the Doctor explaining how to use manual stabilizers are superfluous and have no relation to the rest of the plot.
Pull these two levers up. They'll pull down and to the left, pull them up and to the right, as strong as you can. Got it?
And that's on top of all the logical inconsistencies. Why is everyone running in a straight line rather than to the side? Why is the ship travelling fast enough to rocket towards them in these cuts, yet slow enough for them to outrun it here? It's a flashy sequence with a lack of thought behind it. Also, I'd expect more than a hollow AI-generated conversation for our characters reuniting.
We thought you were dead.
We thought you were dead. Right.
I do think it's a shame that splitting our characters up wasn't maintained for longer. Perhaps even pair Ryan with the Doctor, since he's supposed to be the focus of the series. Placing Ryan in Yaz's position, Yaz's in Graham's, and Graham in Ryan's makes so much more sense to me based on what we know of these characters currently. Have Ryan as the one who feels overwhelmed and disoriented, Graham waking up, panicked, wondering where Ryan is, and Yaz as level-headed and attempting to take control. Ryan could build his bond with the Doctor, and Yaz and Graham could help support each other's development. Being away from the Doctor also allows a chance for Yaz to show her independence and authority, taking advantage of her police training, which would feel more natural than level-headed Graham. It'd create tension trying to see our characters reunite throughout the episode, rather than everyone sticking together all the time. So anyway, our characters continue forward, and we get some more of Chibnall's quirky Doctor humour.
Want to borrow my shades?
Oh, so?
Can't remember who I borrowed them off now. It was either Audrey Hepburn or Pythagoras.
Hey, Pythagoras never wore shades.
Obviously never saw him with a hangover.
Now, comedic historical references aren't anything new to the Doctor.
Pity about the scarf. Madame Nostradamus made it for me. A witty little knitter.
But they're usually handled with a better execution than this. I think what ultimately ruins this joke is the predictability. You can just see the punchline coming from a mile away. You know she's gonna say some historical figure who you just couldn't believe was a party animal. Pythagoras in sunglasses. How hilarious. Kinda strange when you consider Pythagoras is credited with designing a cup that encouraged drinking in moderation, but whatever, I doubt Chibnall gave it that much thought. A similar joke, but with much better delivery, comes in the series 10 episode Smile.
That's good, isn't it? In the future, we don't eat living things, we eat algae.
I met an emperor made of algae once. He fancied me.
At first, it almost seems like the Doctor will make one of his whimsical moral speeches about algae being alive, only to suddenly follow it with,
He fancied me.
unlike the Pythagoras one, it's unexpected and imaginative. I'm far more endeared to an emperor of algae crushing on the Doctor than Pythagoras getting drunk and wearing some plastic sunglasses.
Good Queen Bess. And let me tell you, her nickname is no longer...
Also, I'm pretty sure they added in this line later to explain why the Doctor had sunglasses in her brand new coat.
Oh, I forgot to put stuff in these pockets. Got any cash? Empty pockets.
Anyway, our characters amble towards a tent where we get one of the few jokes in the Chibnall era that I actually like.
Do you two know what that is?
It's a tent.
Oh, obviously it's a tent. I meant...
Unfortunately, it's here that the episode's pacing issues start showing. It's taken us 10 minutes to get to this point. That's over 20% of the entire episode. And rather than blitzing through the rest of the setup, we're still wasting time on pointless details.
How can we understand them? Ain't they talking alien?
The story pauses to introduce yet more implants, this time being universal translators. And I get it, you want to explain why our characters can communicate with these aliens, but it seems like a missed opportunity to allude to the TARDIS being nearby.
If I had my TARDIS, you wouldn't need them.
These translators are mentioned here once to cover up a minor plot contrivance, but are basically meaningless and never mentioned again. Anyway, we finally join our two races inside the tent. Here we meet Ilan, who introduces our episode's premise. We're at the final stage of the Rally of the 12 Galaxies, a competition where 4,000 contestants start with nothing and barter their way up, journeying across 94 planets and 209 terrains. Credit to Chibnall, he has some pretty incredible ideas at times. This premise alone could be enough for a whole movie or even TV series. However, something I do find weird is how the Doctor just wanders in and immediately dominates the whole conversation.
I'm the Doctor. These are my new best friends, Ryan, Graham and Yaz. Now.
But it's not like she interrupts them, everyone was just silently waiting for her entrance. They could have embraced a little bathos and had her interrupt Ilan during a pompous and grandiose speech. Instead, she just goes on and on with more and funny Chibnall writing.
This is lavish for a tent. Ah, see, hologram. Thought it might be. Good one, though. I love a good hologram. I was a hologram once, for 3 weeks. The gossip I picked up. What are you? Projection reality or AI interface? Because if you're interface...
It's not all bad, thankfully. To Chibnall's credit, I do quite like this line.
And then it all went quite badly wrong, actually. These three have been very good not going on about it. Very grateful you came along.
Unfortunately, humour doesn't quite seem to be Chibnall's strength, and this makes the quippy dialogue of our companions feel stilted and tepid.
Are you confused?
Pretty confused. Proper confused.
I'm way beyond confused.
Now, whilst the setups and concepts established here are very interesting, the scene ultimately goes on for way too long. They spend over 5 minutes inside this tent. That's another 10% of the entire episode, and most of it is pretty irrelevant discussion. It doesn't help that the scene is dominated by this awkward, samey music track that feels like it's constantly building to something but never quite gets there. And whilst I kinda like the currency jokes, for the sake of adding a bit of world building...
How much is a crown? 200 Kavlons.
It's 94 velours.
No, 4,020s.
And old money.
Bit behind on my exchange rates.
Enough.
The Moomin Bean jokes only really highlights how lazy the alien design is here.
Never even heard of Moomin beings.
Beings. Human beings. Earth.
These characters are apparently the races Muxturan and Albarian. Is it Muxturan?
Yeah, cheering.
These characters are apparently the races Muxturan and Albarian, but have little to distinguish them from humans aside from a name. Just look at End of the World. It had way more alien types, and that was back in 2005. Geez, so we're 16 minutes into this episode now. That's a third of the way. But we've got our setup sorted, so surely it's now time for adventure, right? Actually, no. Instead, we're going to sit around and talk for a few minutes. Just have a little chit chat. Yeah. How are you getting on? How's your character growth? Chibnall's awkward, fragmented approach to character really starts to show here. The story has to unnaturally slow down to let characters talk about things, rather than weaving it into the narrative. You can see this from how jarringly we'll jump from an emotional conversation back to plot dialogue, with all characters seemingly forgetting whatever they were just discussing.
You talk about this stuff way too much.
And you don't talk about it enough.
That's not an engine. It's more like a massive battery.
Oh yeah, and Chibnall's dialogue also has the subtlety of a brick thrown through a window.
How's your family, Armstrong?
It's also here that the gulf between concept and execution really starts to reveal itself. This so-called race barely feels like one. There's a complete lack of urgency to our characters, and they basically always stick together, even sharing the same boat. For a race that apparently whittled down 4,000 contestants to only 2 people, one that covered 94 planets and 209 terrains, you'd surely expect a far more intense and brutal challenge for this finale. And yet, here we are, 20 minutes into this episode, it hasn't even kicked off. Are you kidding me? Not to mention, shouldn't there be an audience for this race? Obviously, budget plays a part here, and there's a limitation to what the show can pull off, but I don't think that's the issue. You already spent all your money to film in South Africa, and, well, the planet looks like South Africa. If the 1960s can immerse me in a world of airfix and toilet tubes, convincing me it's a mysterious futuristic city on a desolate planet, then surely budget is no excuse as to why this episode fails to build its world properly. These issues are fundamentally in the writing. A huge reason for the general lack of excitement is our companions' reactions to everything. Despite seeing a family member killed and being ripped across space, only to almost die and eventually end up in a deadly space race, our companions remain pretty much unfazed, just taking everything in their stride. Their reactions to actually being on an alien planet are disappointingly underwhelming, making it seem more like a quaint novelty rather than the incredible experience it actually would be.
We're on an alien planet, Graham.
Well, the 3 suns in the sky are a bit of a giveaway.
Uh-huh. What do we do?
Shall we just follow her?
Alien planet, man.
I know.
When they first approach the weirdly shared boat and notice its engine is down, Graham is just like, oh, don't worry, we'll fix it.
And this boat doesn't work.
Oh, me and Ryan will take a look.
We'll where?
You're on a completely alien planet with alien people and alien technology, yet you're relaxed enough to try your hand at fixing this alien engine.
He definitely is the most cautious of the 3. Much prefer to stand at the back and assess the situation.
Yeah, well, those MVQ classes must be good for something. An engine's an engine.
If we compare this to previous characters like Bill and Rose, their reactions are the focus, and we get to see how overwhelmed they feel. This emphasises the incredible nature of their experiences, therefore making them feel more understandable and realistic to us.
How you doing?
How do you think?
Our companions feel more grounded, and the worlds they visit more fantastical.
That's different sky. Is it made of something different? What is sky made of?
Lemon drops.
Really?
No, but wouldn't that be nice?
They're just so alien. The aliens are so alien.
Oh, by the way, welcome to what I presume is your first alien planet. Don't touch anything.
Without this focus on their reactions, it completely downplays the wonder of space travelling, and instead makes it feel mundane. Bill and Rose also challenge and question the Doctor in their episodes, demonstrating their agency as active protagonists.
Your machine gets inside my head. It gets inside and it changes my mind and you didn't even ask.
I just want to fix something.
Whoa, what are you doing?
Nothing.
Yeah, because I think you're going to wipe my memory. You're stupid, you know.
Tell me who you are!
This is who I am, right here, right now. All right, all that counts is here and now, and this is me.
Yeah, and I'm here too because you brought me here, so just tell me!
No one can know about me.
This is the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me in my life. The only exciting thing.
I'm sorry.
Just imagine how it would feel if someone did this to you.
Whereas Ryan, Yaz and Graham continue the same kind of passive, trusting attitude from the first episode, never properly confronting the Doctor. Their relationship doesn't get a chance to build since they all just get along with each other from the start, with only a little tension between Ryan and Graham. We can see this weirdly apathetic emotional response to things in this conversation.
Do you really think she can get us off here?
She saved Carl. She got the better of Tim Shaw. And she did jump a crane. Don't know what would have happened if she hadn't have been there.
Yaz is right. I mean, she is our best hope. Or only option, depending on your politics.
Yaz almost comes across as weirdly insensitive to Ryan's question, especially considering he literally just lost his grandma primarily due to the Doctor's involvement. Also, Graham, that was your wife too. Like, why do you care so little?
Yaz is right.
Anyway, once we get inside the boat, you really begin to notice just how claustrophobic this episode's direction is. In fairness, it almost works in favour of this scene, since it heightens the tension and discomfort of cramming everyone into the same boat. However, this kind of direction appears constantly throughout the episode, seemingly unmotivated by any kind of emotional intention. We have to suffer through awful camera shake, weird framing of characters that feels cramped, and an obsession with ugly extreme close-ups in select focus. Sure, the new anamorphic lenses might have that stereotypically cinematic look, but most of the shots feel like you gave those fancy lenses to a bunch of first-year film students. You can really see the mess of directing in this scene.
That's some smell. What is it, garlic?
Wait, everyone stop. Look, it's like the ground's moving.
We start with a decent-looking wide shot, but we barely get a chance to spot our characters before we suddenly cut to a close-up. However, this close-up has a shallow depth of field, which means that all of our characters are completely out of focus up until the last moment, by which point Jodie has already flown halfway off screen, and just as the camera has managed to reframe her in the shot, we jarringly cut to this medium close-up of Ryan who's just stood completely still. In motion, the entire sequence is disorienting and confusing, in a way that might not be immediately obvious, but from the awkward cutting, poor focus, and terrible framing, you just don't really get a sense of what anyone's doing in the scene. Aside from rare instances, almost none of these shots feel particularly planned or thought out, and there's a lack of visual storytelling throughout this episode, something only emphasized by Chibnall's expositional dialogue. Take this moment where we discover the water has flesh-eating microbes, yet this is revealed by the Doctor just scanning it and telling us, rather than seeing it happen.
And don't drink the water. In fact, don't even touch the water.
Flesh-eating microbes, millions of them living in there.
Imagine if in Silence in the Library, instead of the haunting chicken leg demonstration, the Doctor just told us what the Vashta Nerada did and we never saw it. Something else causing issues is the way this dialogue is shared amongst our characters. Part of the reason why 1960s Skaro still feels so believable is because our characters actively discuss things with each other, asking questions and making observations as they explore.
It crumbles when you touch it, look. It's petrified. How fascinating, a petrified jungle.
It's hideous.
Yes, it is. It's also significant. Nothing on Earth could look like this.
Unfortunately, someone has seemingly sapped all the curiosity from our current companions, as they rarely discuss or wonder about the things they see. Instead, Chibnall saddles the Doctor with asking all of the narrative questions, and since they're no longer woven into a conversation shared between multiple people, it comes across as really unnatural and irritating.
Where are those people now? Why are there so few signs of life? What's that? What do you mean, here we go? Here we go where? For what? I wonder who those were built for. What happened to everyone? Why would you need robot guards on a deserted planet? Made cruel how? And by whom? What happened in here? What, like a race? Are you two space racing each other? Think of the technology, the civilization required to build all that. Then ask yourselves, where are they?
The Doctor is often just blatantly stating the big mysteries of the episode, rather than letting the dialogue evoke the questions in the audience's mind.
No people, no animals, no insects, no nothing. But he talked about the old settlements. What happened here?
No one cares.
This general approach to storytelling has been dubbed Visual Big Finish by many, in reference to the audio plays produced by Big Finish, yeah. Obviously, these stories lack the luxury of a visual medium to convey information, which can occasionally lead to characters having to state whatever they can see.
There was some sort of mechanical digger. Something's going on under the cover of darkness, yes?
Oh, yes. I've never seen so many police. The whole area's cordoned off.
However, the Chibnall era doesn't have this excuse, and yet it does this so often that you can comfortably listen to his episodes and still understand basically everything that happens. I left this story playing in the background whilst working and was surprised at how clearly I could follow it.
Brian, have you seen this? Surveillance footage.
Look, they found the hatch.
Big locked door. I love a big locked door.
It's another spaceship.
Another spaceship? About to crash land.
4 people who barely know each other, stranded on a planet called Desolation. No route trackers, no way off, and judging by what you just told us, very little hope of survival. This shows us the whole network of tunnels. Your friend Ilan warned us not to travel at night. We could use the tunnels to keep moving while it's dark, avoiding whatever's on the surface.
Scorch marks all along the walls.
Inscriptions on the floor.
What is it, some sort of cave painting?
Almost. Left by the people who worked here.
Can you read it? What does it say?
See what I mean? In fact, the lack of engagement almost made the story more enjoyable to me. It's for this reason that I have to question if this approach is somehow intentional. Is Chibnall perhaps attempting to appeal to those who may be distracted by their phones or conversations with others whilst watching television? Unfortunately for those actually watching, it creates a weirdly passive viewing experience. All the information and questions are served directly to you on a plate, almost as if the episode doesn't want you to actually think and immerse yourself in the storyline. Anyway, for some reason Epso gets an entire monologue about jumping out of a tree and how he learned to never trust anyone, which completely grinds the already stagnant pace to a halt. The Ghost Monument, an episode that really needs to build the relationship between our characters, is instead sidetracked by dealing with these two arseholes.
That is messed up.
This painfully dull conversation continues when Armstrong also gets a monologue, with those irritating emotional pads from last week turned up to 11.
Albar is being systematically cleansed. Half my family are in hiding. The others are on the run.
However, one thing Armstrong's speech on family made me realise is that she feels like she should have been a lot younger. Making her closer to the age of Ryan or Yaz would have made it easier to draw parallels between them, potentially giving more impact to her relationship with Yaz. Plus, it makes her situation seem more desperate if she's willing to risk her life for her family while so young. Although I guess this could make it harder for Chibnall to shove in his forced representation, which ends up structured like a particularly bad punchline.
You know the stanza too?
My wife died because of that.
Mine too.
It's then forgotten about as quickly as it came up. This itself marks a Chibnall-era theme of gay representation being confined to awkward one-time mentions, where seeing how casually it can be included seems more important than developing a three-dimensional character.
Lost secure digits in Yorkshire. That's what told my boyfriend anyway.
Ironically, this faux casual nature only draws more attention to itself. I realise a lot of people criticise the representation of Bill, and whilst I agree that was definitely flawed, at least she was a developed character with a distinct personality. This is just lazy by comparison. Ultimately, the connections drawn between Yaz and Armstrong are just weak. We barely learn who actually comprises Armstrong's family, and Yaz spews this awkward line which is, again, all tell and no show.
You're making me miss my family. That's quite some achievement. Considering my dad drives me bananas and my sister's trying to get me to move out so she can have my bedroom. And I only saw him yesterday.
Do you remember when that one shot of Donna communicated everything we need to know about her feelings towards her life and family? Yeah, that was nice. It's not like any of this family stuff is particularly relevant to the episode anyway. We haven't even seen Yaz's family at this point, and yet she's already having a change of heart towards them? Then, as if our characters' Ambien-fueled reactions to the deadly alien planet weren't mundane enough, They go to sleep. Seriously? How much less interested could a companion be on their first adventure? We're nearly halfway into the episode and almost nothing important has happened, for fuck's sake. What's clear is what the Ghost Monument should have been about, and that's cementing the relationship between the Doctor and her companions. Generally, these episodes have been built around a certain theme to support this. End of the World has the Doctor showing Rose the death of her planet, something he had just recently experienced. And only after she witnesses this profound sight does he feel comfortable in opening up to her. The Beast Below mirrors the Doctor figuring out the mystery of the Star Whale, with Amy growing to understand the Doctor, and her revelations end up being a key to the episode's resolution.
If you were that old and that kind, and the very last of your kind, very old and very kind and the very, very last, sound a bit familiar?
Fires of Pompeii has Donna grow to understand the burden of being the Doctor and the kind of decisions that you're forced to make so often. What it's like seeing the universe through his eyes.
History's back in place and everyone dies.
You've got to go back! Doctor, I'm telling you, take this thing back!
Just save someone.
You were right. Sometimes I need someone. Welcome aboard.
The Ghost Monument lacks a solid theme that's effectively supported by the narrative, leading to this nebulous mess of half-baked ideas and characterization. Based on the episode we have, I think that focusing on themes of trust and teamwork could have been a logical progression of things. Our companions have just been faced with death and ripped out of their ordinary lives into the heart of a deadly space race. Ideally, they should be dramatically responding to this in different ways. Maybe it leaves Yaz spellbound, but causes Graham distressed to be in danger again. Their lives are now in the hands of the Doctor, and she has to earn their faith in her to save them. This would have the effect of bestowing confidence in this new Doctor on the audience, making her have to step up and take responsibility after her initial carefree and impertinent attitude. Graham could doubt the Doctor due to losing Grace and worrying about Ryan, but maybe this starts to change once he sees Ryan is safe in her protection. Perhaps Ryan trusts the Doctor the soonest, possibly drawn to her as a parental figure after losing both Grace and his mother. This leaves Yaz as more neutral, willing to trust the Doctor, but with an independent streak that means she won't always follow her orders. With this, we have a clear dynamic for our characters, supported by what we know about them already, and each one forming a unique relationship with the Doctor. This also has the added benefit of making Epso's monologue actually relevant, since he voices his belief in never trusting anyone. This way you could have Armstrong and Epso swaying the companions in different directions, with their opposing views on trust. Instead, this moment lacks any resonance since this team is already an impenetrable force. It does nothing to make the companions reconsider their situation. I mean, heck, maybe all that talk of bonuses from the first 15 minutes could lead somewhere.
But I've got 2 bonuses.
You are a very funny little bonus.
Bonuses?
No. Bonuses and snake traps are over.
We never actually find out what bonus means. Maybe the racers are able to pick up people to use for labour or to be expendable. We can have Epso start off treating the Doctor and Ryan poorly, perhaps forcing them to risk their life for his safety, which helps establish him as a more menacing figure. This also gives the Doctor someone to clash with, which would emphasise her need to step up and take control, using her wits to overcome the danger Epso presents them with. Armstrong, on the other hand, could be more sympathetic and ends up working with Yaz and Graham as equals. They're able to overcome the hazards through teamwork. This all ties into the themes of trust and working together. Maybe Epso, through the story, learns that it's more advantageous to not abuse and take advantage of his bonuses, and instead he should be working with them because teamwork is better than taking advantage of people. It almost turns into an episode about leadership and stuff, which ties into the Doctor's role as like the leader of the group, but you have the twist not being that in order to lead you have to lead with and be part of, and it shows that they should trust. It all comes together and it's just not in there. And so, I don't know, just fine. Our characters are once again left with so little to contribute to the narrative, basically doing nothing for most of this episode. And it's unfortunate that one of the few times a companion actually does stand up and do something. I find it to be entirely counterintuitive to the character we had established thus far.